Okay, so in this video, we obviously start with a fixed average and marginal costs. It'll take more than one video, and we'll just start moving in. We'll just kind of start moving from concept to concept. Okay, so in the theory of the firm, the short run is defined as any situation in which the firm has at least one fixed input of production. Thus, in the short run, the firm has some fixed cost. Any existent Any existent firm in the real world does have some fixed cost, so that firms are always in some short-run situation. In contrast, the long run is defined as the converse, in that it is a situation in which all the firm's inputs are regarded as being variable. The short run is then an actual situation, whereas the long run is a planning situation wherein the firm can dream about how big or small it must be in the future by manipulating its inputs and its technology. Recall from section 3.2 that one of the assumptions of perfectly competitive markets is that firms are free to enter and exit the market. This means that new firms can enter the market and start producing output Q, while existing firms can close and exit the market. Although firms are free to come and go, existing firms wishing to exit must liquidate fixed and variable inputs, and firms entering the market must incur set up fixed and variable costs to enter. These entry-exit actions then involve varying inputs that would be fixed in a short-run situation. Therefore, the entry and exit of firms will be thought of as taking place in a long-run situation. In our previous analysis, the firm was free to choose any amount of labor and capital to meet the target output Q and did not face other costs or constraints. In the short run, however, the firm has to incur costs that are independent of Q. That is, as long as the firm continues to operate, does not close and exit the market, the firm must pay a certain amount independently of Q. For example, consider a restaurant that must pay a government health inspection fee just to operate, and a factory that is required to maintain a minimum quantity of safety equipment. Hence, we can break down the firm's cost function into two parts. So this is just a very basic understanding. Our total cost is obviously our fixed cost plus our variable cost. Usually things are a function of quantity. So the variable cost is a function of output quantity. Fixed cost is not a function of anything. It's a constant. And cost is therefore fixed cost plus variable cost. Okay, so the fixed cost is the part of cost in the short run that does not vary with output Q, and the firm must pay as long as it stays in business. The variable cost is the part of cost that varies with output. Therefore, think about the cost from our previous analysis. So that's cost wage times labor plus rent times capital as the variable cost that comes from the firm's ability to change labor and capital. Think about a fixed cost is everything else that the firm cannot change in the short run. Another useful definition is average cost. Of course, the average cost is just the total cost divided by the quantity at that moment. If to produce Q equals 100, the cost is 300, then the cost per unit of output is $3. The average cost is the total cost divided by the total Q. So 300 divided by 100 is, of course, $3 per unit. Yeah, so the average, we have to kind of pick a Q, but the cost at that Q, the cost divided by Q is obviously the average cost per unit that we produce. We similarly define average fixed cost, AFC, as the fixed cost divided by the quantity, the average variable cost as the variable cost divided by the quantity. Yeah. So there's a lot of small things along the way, they come together later, but the marginal cost is actually quite a big deal. Later we will see. But the marginal cost is the derivative, marginal cost, the derivative of cost with respect to quantity. A marginal cost of 4 can be interpreted as follows. If the firm wants to produce one extra unit of output Q, then the cost will go up by $4. So they kind of describe it in a way, but basically um, it is the cost to produce one more unit. That marginal always kind of bugs us. Uh, it's a technicality, but the x-axis, the horizontal axis is Q. Yeah, therefore a marginal anything we have to kind of increase by an infinitely small bit, which is impossible in the real world. If you increase by 1 unit, the slope has already changed, but we ignore that. So it's the approximate. Yeah, so if we increase one whole unit of Q, we can only increase by integers. If we increase one whole unit of Q, our cost will approximately increase by 4. So that's what the marginal cost is. The marginal cost is going to be the money it costs to produce one more unit. Yeah. So anyways, as always, this is an approximation because we are taking a derivative. We are actually talking about a marginal change in Q. Marginal change is a code word for infinitely small. That's what calculus is, an infinitely small move along the horizontal axes. It is important to note that when we take the derivative of C with respect to Q, the fixed cost is irrelevant. The derivative of a constant is always 0. Consequently, the marginal cost, blah, blah, blah. We can read that if we want. We don't care. Okay, so economies and diseconomies of scale. So as a firm grows larger and produces more output, does it become relatively cheaper or more expensive to produce? That is, if the firm decides to produce more output, will the average cost go up or down? At a given production level Q, we say that the firm exhibits economies of scale if a marginal increase in Q decreases the firm's average cost. The firm exhibits diseconomies of scale if a marginal increase in Q raises the firm's average cost. Then the firm does not exhibit economy. Yeah, so if the derivative there of the average cost equals 0, the firm does not exhibit economies nor diseconomies of scale. Let's just kind of take a look ahead here. Okay, so they kind of give some examples that we don't need, but slowly but surely, I kind of know the homework that's coming up. We viewed it in some other videos, but these graphs are important. So figure 3.12 depicts the average cost and marginal cost of a firm. Yeah, in the initial region between Q equals 0 and Q equals Q hat, the average cost is declining as output is increased, hence the firm exhibits economies of scale. In the second region above that, the opposite of true. And we have diseconomies of scale. But basically on the left of Q hat are economies of scale. We do want the average cost to be higher than when I lecture on this, I forget the lingo a little bit, but we want the average cost to be higher than the marginal cost. So you see where we have to the right of Q, the marginal cost is higher. We can't have that. They give a lot of examples here that we simply don't need. Okay, so we continue here with the next video.